The sound of her voice cut through the apartment like glass shattering. "I'm done with our marriage," she screamed, every word vibrating against the walls, against my chest, against the very air I breathed. For a split second, the world froze. I stared at her, feeling the pulse of my own heartbeat in my throat. And then I smiled, not because I was happy, not because I was indifferent, but because I finally understood something I had been too blind to see. We had been married for 9 years, 9 years that had slowly unraveled under the weight of silent grievances and unspoken frustrations. On the surface, our life looked perfect. A tidy apartment, a steady income, and social lives that kept us busy enough to avoid noticing the cracks. But lately, I'd felt a distance growing between us. Subtle at first, a skipped kiss here, a fleeting glance there. I chalked it up to stress, work, the natural ebb and flow of a long-term marriage. I never suspected betrayal. I sat on the edge of the sofa, watching her pace in the living room like a caged animal. Her hands trembled, gripping the hem of her sweater, her eyes flicking with a mixture of fury and fear. "I can't do this anymore," she said, voice breaking. "I've tried. I really have," but she stopped, swallowed, and looked at me with an intensity that made my stomach twist. "You've tried what?" I asked softly, keeping my voice calm. Calmness had become a weapon of sorts. It kept me in control, even as the world beneath me shifted. I need space. I need freedom. I need to breathe without feeling trapped. Her words tumbled out, but something in her eyes told me there was more. There always is more. I nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. "I understand," I said, though every fiber of my being screamed at me not to. I wanted to shout, to demand the truth, but I held it back. There was a strange clarity and restraint, a bitter knowledge that sometimes silence tells more than confrontation. Over the next few days, I noticed the subtle signs. A phone left face down, the quick flinch when I approached, late nights at work, vague explanations for missed dinners. I could feel the betrayal simmering under the surface, a slow poison I had to confirm before it consumed me entirely. I started keeping track, not obsessively, but carefully. The patterns were there if I looked close enough. Texts that disappeared too quickly, whispered phone calls cut short, receipts for dinners I hadn't been invited to. Each piece was a shard of evidence, jagged and painful. But I needed to see the full picture. I needed to understand why the woman I loved had begun to vanish before my eyes. One evening, I found myself in the hallway outside her office building. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but curiosity clawed at me, and suspicion had become unbearable. Through the glass door, I saw her laughing, leaning into a man whose familiarity made my chest tighten. They were too close, too comfortable, too intimate. My hands went cold as the image seared itself into my mind. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I went home, made myself dinner, and sat quietly. I let the images play over and over in my head, each replay harder to bear than the last. I didn't know whether to cry or scream, so I did neither. I just smiled, that same ironic smile I'd worn when she screamed at me. Smiles had become my armor. Days later, the confrontation finally came. She returned home late, tired and flushed from some excuse I no longer believed. I watched her move through the apartment, noting the small details. The way she avoided my gaze, the faint perfume that wasn't hers, the tension in her shoulders. "Can we talk?" I asked, voice low. She hesitated, then nodded. We sat in the living room, the air between us heavy with unspoken truths. I don't know how to say this," she began, wringing her hands. "I never wanted to hurt you, I swear. But things happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I let her words hang. The silence was suffocating, but it allowed me to prepare. I had seen the signs, traced the threads, and now I could finally hear the confession I had suspected for weeks. I met someone," she admitted, eyes downcast. "It started as nothing, just a conversation, a connection. But it grew, and before I knew it, she swallowed, choked on the rest. I was in love with him." The words hit like a physical blow. I could feel my ribs compressing, my chest tightening, but I stayed still. I let her speak, let her unravel her own betrayal. There was a raw honesty in her voice, a vulnerability that made the hurt sting even more. I didn't want this, she continued, tears streaming down her face. I want to come back. I wanted us to work. But I can't, not anymore. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch between us. My mind was a storm of emotions, pain, anger, disbelief, heartbreak. But beneath it all, there was a strange, quiet clarity. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to grovel. I had known in my own way that this day would come. I had seen the cracks, traced the patterns, prepared myself for the collapse. So that's it, I said finally, voice calm but edged with steel. You're leaving. You've already made your choice. She nodded, and I could see the relief and shame mingling in her expression. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered again, as if saying it could erase everything. I stood, walked the window, and looked out at the city lights. I could feel the betrayal in every nerve, but I also felt something else. Freedom, in a way. Freedom from illusions, from denial, from the slow suffocation of marriage that had ended long before she screamed those words. I hope he makes you happy, I said quietly, not turning to face her. I hope you find what you're looking for. Her sobs filled the apartment, but I didn't flinch. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just stood there, watching, waiting, understanding that some pain is meant to be endured, not escaped. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics, of dividing belongings and settling accounts. Each moment was a knife edge of emotion. The sight of her leaving with his presence, the hollow echo of her absence, the memories of a life we had built together now fractured and irretrievable. And yet, amid the devastation, I discovered a strange strength. I could sleep again, breathe again, make decisions without the weight of betrayal pressing on me like a constant shadow. I began to reclaim myself piece by piece, day by day, understanding that love, even when lost, could leave something beautiful behind. Resilience, insight in the knowledge that I could survive heartbreak without losing my soul. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. She returned to collect a few things she had left behind. I was there, sitting at the kitchen table, a mug of cold coffee in my hands. She paused, taking the sight of me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to hurt this much, she said softly. I smiled again, the same smile I had worn from the moment she screamed. It did hurt, but I survived. You survived too, I suppose, in your own way. She looked down, ashamed, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the pull of old love, the ghost of what we had once shared. But it was just that, a ghost. The reality was here, tangible, undeniable. The betrayal had been revealed, the marriage ended, and I was left with the raw, unfiltered truth of who she was and what she had done. As she walked out for the last time, I let her go, not with bitterness, not with vengeance, but with the quiet, resolute understanding that I had endured the storm. My heart ached, yes, but it beat stronger now, unshackled from the illusions of trust broken and promises betrayed. I sat there long after she left, staring at the empty apartment, the silence a stark reminder of loss. And yet, I smiled again, softly this time, because I had survived. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and the collapse of everything I believed in, and I had come out the other side whole, if not unchanged. In the end, she had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. Painful, raw, and irreversible though it was, there was clarity in that choice, a lesson in the cruelty and beauty of human emotion. And as the night stretched on, I realized that sometimes the most powerful act of love is letting go, not a person, but of the illusions that bind us, and smiling to the hurt, because life, heartbreak, and resilience continue, whether we're ready or not.